Sometimes I think the word game is stuck on almost everything that isn't serious. If you play music, if you draw pictures with a computer, that's not a game. You don't get a score, but we call it games. And there's sometimes this down thing. Don't play games. Don't play around on the computer. And yet there's a lot of good can come from gameplay.
All right, how's everybody doing? It's Wednesday. My Stream Deck is not working. What the hell? I am very disappointed. Come on, Stream Deck. Maybe the USB cable's shut? I'm not quite sure, but it's just... I use this thing all the time. Why is it not working? Why are we not working? It's going to be it's going to be a pain in the ass if this is not working, because I use it to switch everything. Let's try restarting it. Anyways, so how's everybody doing today? Like I said, it's Wednesday, and trying to see what's going on with this. It says, okay, let's see. Maybe it'll play nice. Let's see. It unmuted. Okay, it's responding just really slow. All right. Anyways, it'll have to work. Let's see. ARMCam 1 and go back to main. Okay, so it is working. The buttons just aren't updating for some reason. So, anyways, let's jump right into it. So I'm going to talk about the latest project, which is what's upturned right here. And while I'm talking about this, you guys post your questions in the chat, and then I will answer them. So I got some exciting news for you guys that have the Anycubic Mega Zero. I will be pushing a firmware update out for the Mega Zero and the Mega Zero V2. And one of those things is we now have easy out filament sensor support. So I did some testing, and since this board is in the Marlin firmware tested or set up as a CR10, like the Creality board, all the pinouts are the same. I was like, you know what? All the pinouts for the LCD are the same. I'm willing to bet that this would work with our existing filament sensor kit. And sure enough, it does. So I'm getting this machine ready to go out to the print farm. And one of those things that is a requirement in our print farm is that we have a filament sensor. So I will be pushing a update out later today that will add the Mega Zero V2 to the config, which is what this one's configured as. And even though this is a 1, I want to show you guys something. This is a V2 and a V1. The only difference is the V2 comes with a heated bed. But if you notice, I got a little ballsy here, and I went ahead and soldered some wires on to the MOSFET here. Do you see, or where the MOSFET would be? So you see the pads here. There would be a MOSFET here for the heated bed, but since it doesn't come with them, they don't populate it. However, these are the wires that come with our MOSFET that we sell, and we're actually able to drive an external MOSFET with this, and that's why there is a meanwhile here now. So just a simple cover on here. I used the power cord that came with it, cut it, stripped it, put crimp ends on it. Use our 12 gauge wire set here for the main power. And now this is a V1 with the heated bed. And there's a whole write-up on our website, on the Help Center, in the DIY guide section of how to add a heated bed onto your Anycubic Mega Zero. And one of those things is this bracket that I actually designed. It's a very simple bracket, but it's a bracket that allows you to fit the Anycubic 220mm heated bed to this machine on its carriage. And you can see it's solid. We're going to put a flex plate on here. It does come with like an ultra base that you can stick on, but I don't like those. But we're just going to go right on here with our Easy Flex magnet and then the Easy Flex plate. But I'm very happy with how this came out. It actually came out very clean. And one of the things, if you're doing this, you should be brave enough to do it, is you see here, I still have the barrel plug here for the board and hot end power. So the barrel jack, this printer has a wall wart, and that wall wart is 12 volts. So I'm using a 12 volt power supply with 12 volt bed. You see here, I got the MOSFET bolted on with a printed adapter piece here. You can see my control line going in, that's soldered to the board. There's pictures of all the soldering and everything on the article. And so here's my 12 volt power coming from the power supply. Here's the 12 volt out going to the bed. And if you notice, there's another set of wires going into the power input on the MOSFET. And this is feeding this. So everything runs off the mean well. Now, if you cut the power adapter, this is what you get on the inside, is a like braiding, which is the negative, and then your center wire is positive. So I slipped some heat shrink over this, and then I put a bigger piece over the whole thing, and then I'm left with a white and black wire essentially. And this is your positive, and this is your negative. So that's what's going into here. You see I put a piece of heat shrink on the black, or on the ground wires, which are like a braided almost shielding around the center. It's just a style of cable, and then a bigger piece here, so it looks all nice, and it's all very clean installed. The last thing I have to do is snip these, and these will go into an Easy ABL Pro control board, and then I'll have bed leveling. Now, the only thing with these brackets is you see here, these are just some random aluminum spacers I had in my parts bin, and then I use M3 nuts on the bottom here. You can put springs on here if you want to do manual leveling, but the knobs will hit the screw that holds the bracket. So you see there's a nut here, there's a screw that goes up through the bottom to hold this bracket, and this is printed in ABS. And you can see it's very, very stable. But now I have a heated bed on my Mega Zero. I think all in all the cost was about $100. So if you can get the Mega Zero V2 that already comes with a heated bed, do that. But if you already have a Mega Zero, you got it for cheap, or you already have it, you can add a heated bed onto it with not much work. Basically a MOSFET, power supply, the bed, the carriage adapters, and then a firmware update. So you flash this, if you do this kind of mod to it, you flash this as a V2, and then you have the heated bed control. So that's what I was working on today off camera. and this will be going out to the printer farm. Like I said, I just have to hook up power for my EasyABL Pro that's on here. I have the sensor already mounted, but I'm actually going to stash the control box. I think I can fit it inside here, and then I'll run a power wire for the EasyABL out to the MOSFET here, where the main power comes in for the power supply. So I've got one set of cables feeding the MOSFET. It goes to the MOSFET, and then this goes to the MOSFET as well on the always-on power input. So it's in the same terminal as these wires. So hopefully that makes sense. But it came together really nice. And like I said, I'll have the filament sensor up here too, and this will all work. So I'll be pushing a firmware update out that will enable not only the V2 version of this printer, which has the heated bed, but also adding in the configuration options for the Easy Out filament sensor. So this uses the same filament sensor kit as the Ender 3. So I'll be updating that product page with that full kit with the adapter PCB and the sensor with the wire later today as well. So that was my project for today that I was getting out of the way, that I was working on. Hopefully you guys appreciate it. There's, like I said, there is a write-up with pictures. It's not meant to be like step by step. It's more like, here's everything. And, you know, if you can make sense of all the details of the mod, then you should be able to do it with no problem. So you don't have to run the printer board off of the power supply you added for the bed. But if you do that, then you can cannibalize the cord that fed that power adapter and only have one plug for the printer. Now you can run the wall wart, you know, or the power brick, this thing, along with the external power supply for the bed, but then you're gonna have two power cables. So I prefer to just have it all on one. There's, you know, no reason not to. You know, because like I said, the printer runs off 12. I put a 12-volt bed on it, 12-volt power supply, so there we go. All right, let's see what we have for questions today. First one is Brian. I'm running Easy Board, upgraded tough extruder on Bowden a couple weeks ago on a CR10S. I had successful prints today, but I had 2 instances at stocks extruding. The stepper is crazy hot. I backed down the current to 750 mAh. What mode should the drivers be in? The drivers should be in spread cycle mode, not stealth chop. And 750 mAh, depending on what stepper drive or stepper motor you're using, if it's a stock one, that's perfectly fine. 750 mAh is perfectly fine for the stock one. But in my experience, when you're running, if you turn on stealth chop because you were trying to quiet things down a little bit more, you're going to have a hotter motor. I would highly recommend taking it out of stealth chop. Trinamic and us both recommend that you do not use stealth chop on extruder driver, and our firmware set up to have it disabled on the extruder. So that would be something you would have to turn on from the menu on the printer LCD or G code, or in the firmware when you compile it. So, but if it stops extruding, it sounds like something is not configured correctly. It could be the stealth chop versus spread cycle. Or you might have an issue with the cabling, because even on a stock setup, like stock firmware settings, even if you had stealth chop turned on, your motor will get warm, like warmer than the normal board, just because the Trinamics operate, but not crazy hot. So that I would be more inclined to say that there might be something wrong with the cabling. Maybe there's a partial connection. Maybe the plug's not seated all the way. Something could be arcing. If you have a poor connection with the motor and the stepper driver, it can incorrectly read the resistance of the coils and set the VREF too high, which could be the case here, because if it's setting the VREF too high because it thinks like the resistance is higher than it actually is, and it's going to raise how much it's given it in terms of the voltage going to it and how it's chopping the frequency, then you're going to get the stepper driver overheating. Or the motor. So basically your stepper motors should be, they'll be warm most of the time, but not hot enough to where you can't keep your finger on it. So, you know, if you put your finger on it and you're like, that burns, way too hot. When you go to a geared extruder, which it sounds like you did, the tough extruder, your motor will run warmer than a standard one, because it's going to be driving the motor harder. because it's got the gearing, which is fine. All mine that have the tough extruder run warmer than a normal one because it's driving the motor harder. But it shouldn't be too hot to where you can't keep your finger on it. I run in the easy board in my Ender 5 Plus with a tough extruder on the stock motor, and it gets warm, but not uncomfortably warm. I've actually been running that printer straight for like 4 days now. But I would check your cabling, make sure you're not running it in stealth chop mode, switch it to spread cycle, especially with a geared extruder, you want to run spread cycle. Yeah, it's too hot to keep a finger on it. I would check your cabling. It could also be just that your motor's going bad. It's not very common for motors to go bad, but it can happen. So if your motor has damage and it's just getting worse and worse and it's getting hotter and hotter, it's just going to kind of snowball because the wires are windings and they're usually like a varnish coated type wire. And if it gets too hot, that varnish can go away and then start creating shorts or touching other, if the wires are right on top of each other. So that varnish coating's running, wearing away because of the heat. It'll eventually keep lowering and lowering and lowering and lowering the resistance of the coils, and it's not going to be good. So one thing you could do is swap the motor for another one on the printer. The only thing with some of the Creality ones, and I don't know off the top of my head which ones are which, but I know some of them, the center two pins are flipped versus the way the other ones are wired, and vice versa. So like if you swap X and E, it might be okay, or it might not move. I don't have, you know what? I got my CR10. You said it was a CR10. Mine's an older one, but let me look at the wiring on mine here and see, because I thought they were different, if I recall correctly. Yes, my memory does serve correct. So as long as Creality hasn't changed anything from the old models to the current ones, which I don't think they did, the X and Y are wired different, or the X and E are wired differently. So if you switch the cables at the motor side, they're not going to be wired correctly. But what you could do is swap the physical motors and then keep the cables going to them. So keep the X cable going to X, the E going to E, but switch the physical motors, okay? And then at the board side, switch the X and the E plugs. So that should work. But basically what you want to do is use your existing hardware to kind of narrow down where the issue is. So if you switch it and it's running fine with the X motor on E, then that kind of tells you that it sounds like it's either a cabling issue or it's a motor issue. So, yeah, 3 years old. It could just be that the motor's wearing out. It could be that the cable's fatigued and you're not making good connections, but I would start looking there. But 750 mAh for current is not is not high at all. So it shouldn't be running too hot. That would tell me, like, if I had that machine here, I'd be going through and swapping motors. Like, I have spare Creality motors. I don't know if you do. I'm assuming most people don't. I'd be swapping the motor and then running a test print to see if it's still running too hot. If it did, then I would probably change the cable, just kind of go down the list and eliminate the possible issues. Let's see here. Yeah, because if it's driving, if that motor's getting too hot, the stepper driver could be running too hot too, and they do have thermal protection. Also, if your stepper motor gets too hot, they just lose magnetism at that point, and sometimes it'll damage it, but what'll happen is the magnet, the strength just goes to nothing at a certain point, and then it doesn't move. But it could also be that the stepper driver itself on the board is getting strained. Go through and do your troubleshooting. Oh, you do have a spare stepper. Okay, well then swap that out, do some tests. If it's still running too hot, then send our support people. We have a 6-month warranty on it, so if you're still a warranty, and you're like, okay, I changed the board, I changed the motor, I swapped cables around, it's still running really hot, there might be something wrong with the driver. We don't have very high failure rates with the drivers. I think out of, you know, the thousands of board we've sold, I've only seen 5 bad drivers, like 5 bad total, and there's 4 drivers per board. So it's insanely low, but it's not impossible. But anytime I've had a stepper driver shutting down and the motor running really hot, it's been either an issue with the motor or it's been an issue with the cable going from the board to the motor. So you got to kind of narrow it down and figure out where that failure is occurring or where that partial connection is happening, because like I said, if you have a partial connection, it'll screw up the driver and how it's delivering the current. So it calculates the current based on the resistance of the coils. So if your wire isn't making good contact or the coils are going out on the motor, it's going to screw with the reading, and it could run too high, it could run too low, but either way, it could cause problems. And the driver shutting down could be due to heat, or it could be that it's going into protection mode because maybe at a certain point it just loses connection, and the driver does have a self-protect mode. That's kind of a last resort where, you know, if you hot plug a stepper driver, most of the time the driver will just stop responding until you power cycle it, because it does have a protection mode. You guys need to keep posting questions in chat. You're kind of quiet today. So let's see. Jonathan Barnes, have you tested Idea Maker yet? I have not had time, man. I got S3D all sorted out. We will be looking at it next year, but just trying to get through the end of year stuff. I just ended up ordering a bunch of network equipment. I know we got a lot of nerds here watching. If anybody uses any of the Unify stuff, I already have their access points, but I just ordered their Dream Machine Pro, their router, and a bunch of their switches. So I kind of want to get everything on Unify. Right now, my switches are a mishmash of like Netgear, HP, Avaya, Nortel, TreadNet, like, and some Cisco ones. They're all over the place. So I just ordered all new switches and the Dream Machine Pro, and we're replacing everything because I want to be able to manage it from one location. Because if I have to roll out a VLAN, it is a pain here. Like, my switches are so old that I have to use a version of Firefox that's 10 years old. It's like a portable one, just to load the interface, because it doesn't work in any modern browser or Chrome or new versions of Firefox. The Nortel Avaya ones I have, some of them are almost 20 years old, and they use Java, like an outdated version of Java. So I'm looking forward to having everything updated. Like, my network switches are like the last thing that I've got upgraded. I haven't bought new network switches in years. I have a lot of hand-me-downs and stuff that I fixed, but you know, we're running the numbers. Man's like, well, if you want to do the network upgrade this year, we can. So we're doing it. I didn't get their highest end stuff, but I'm just curious who's using Unify routers and switches. I love their access points. I'm looking forward to having everything unified. So let's see. Blasto, is there an easy ABL mount for the Ender 5 Plus? There absolutely is. It's in the download pack. The Ender 5 and the 5 Plus both use the same exact mount. I'm running the Easy ABL on my Ender 5 Plus. I did get notification that my enclosure from that 3D Upfitters place shipped. So that'll probably be a casual stream where we're just hanging out while I'm putting it together. But my ghetto cardboard enclosure works out. I'm on hopefully the last revision of one of the trays for the humidor. But you can see here, it's printing away. I got like 4 hours left on this, but this is the bottom tray. And the issue I had with the first version was, I didn't realize there was a taper on the bottom. So what happened is the back was hitting the tray above it. So I had to make it shorter and then taper it. But this is printing the new revision. So, yeah, let's see here. RAM design, no, you're one way with the power supply is better. Great idea. Oh yeah, with the Anycubic Mega. Yeah, this will be going into the farm. I'm pretty happy with this machine. I'm going to change out the tubing for our tough tube, get the filament sensor mounted up, get the Easy ABL installed, and then it'll get thrown into the farm for a PLA and PET-G machine. Yeah, Brian, you said you had it changed to Stealth Chop. I just noticed that. Yeah, use Spread Cycle. If you don't believe me, it's not my opinion. Well, it is my opinion that I think you should not use stealth chop on an extruder. But if you go through Dynamics datasheet on their 22.8, 22.9 drivers, they specifically state that for 3D printer applications, do not use stealth chop for extruder motors. So, and just in my testing, I noticed sometimes you lose steps because stealth chop has absolutely inferior torque when compared to spread cycle, and you want a lot of torque on your e-motor. And if you hear when spread cycle's on, if you hear kind of like a it's way quieter, but kind of like some people describe it as like kind of a scratchy noise while it's moving. It's completely normal. It's just how the driver is talking to the motor and sending the pulses, etc. Let's see here. 3D print Belgian watching this while streaming a print. What a life. Streamception. He said on the I factor, the Y is noticeably hotter than the X. It's weird. Yeah, you're never going to have the same exact load on the motors unless, running something like a Core XY. Mike V says, Sierra 10S SKR E3 turbo installed and working, but after printing, I have to reset the printer. Otherwise, X and Y motor go haywire. I would say that sounds like a firmware issue, but I've also seen a lot of people having driver issues with those particular ones. I also posted out a link. There's a actual design flaw on the SKR E3 boards that results in temperatures being like all over the place. We posted on our Twitter and Facebook and stuff. But you have to physically modify the board to fix that. But I also have been having issues. I have a SKR 1.4 turbo, which I believe it runs on the same CPU and shares some of the same designs as the E3 turbo. But I have issues where I can run like 2 or 3 prints and then it completely hard locks. My LCD doesn't respond. It doesn't respond over serial. I have to literally hit the reset button on the LCD, which then causes a full CPU reset. So it could just be a defective board. My game plan is to pull the 1.4 out, and I'm going to put an MKS S Gen L in, which I have one of those on my machine called Barney, which is right above me, the little purple guy. Been a great board, been very reliable, just works. I've been happy with it. Which moves into altered proxy, upgrading from MKS 1.4. What do I get? I would go with the S Gen L, and there's a V1 and V2. They're both great boards. I've been using both of them, and I like them. I have a V1 in Barney, and going to be putting a V2 in my ABS machine, which is a AM8 that I built. That started its life as an ANET A8. The only thing left ANET on it are the lead screws and the linear rods. Everything else has been replaced. I got people replying to the networking stuff. Let's see. We got Mike using Cisco PoE. I got some Cisco stuff here, but it's all getting replaced. I want it all on the same brand. I bootstrapped the shit out of my network. I was buying used stuff left and right. Like, I had some switches I got for free because the fans were grinding, and I replaced the fans. But it's time to upgrade that. Basically, everything else on my network's been upgraded. My router's a PFSense box I built like 6 years ago, and that's starting to show its age. So, Adam Rice, Unify is all I use. Jesse Sparks, nice. Dream Machine is great. I love Unify. Richard Lewis, I have the USG 2 Flex Mini. I ordered one of the Flex Minis, and an access point to control from a Docker container running the Cloud Key software on my Synology. I'm looking forward to the Dream Machine is going to be the controller, so I have 2 Nano HDs in the house. I have an AC light in here. I got an in-wall AC by the front door for the doorbell camera, and then I have 2 AC Pros. I have 2 AC Pros in the shop. So I've been using Unify access points for years. I love them. Adam Rice, elaborate. You say Dream is not a good buy if you already have APs. Why not? I have 4 APs in the house and 2 in the shop. Yeah, anyways. The Sansa, what do you think of the Anycubic Chiron? Any good? Initial thoughts were it seemed decent, but I haven't spent a ton of time on it. That's my next machine on the the bench, so to speak, here that I'm going to be playing with and figuring out things to do to. I've heard hit and miss stuff. I've heard people having issues where the bed wires were catching on fire. So that's something I have to look at. Basically, I think it comes down to they didn't use actual silicone wire, so things were breaking and shorting out. And, you know, when the wire starts fatiguing, it creates less and less strands that are connected, which can also then create arcing and heat and then fire. So, Jesse Sparks, why does EasyABL need a breakout box versus using like BL Touch has a connector? So that box provides full isolation of the sensor power and the signaling and your printer's control board. So the sensor itself needs 12 to 24 volts to operate, so it runs on a higher voltage. BL Touch runs off of 5 volts or 3.3. Our ABL sensors need 12 to 24 volts to operate correctly. They're industrial sensors. They don't run on 3 to 5. They run on 12 to 24. They actually, I think, have a higher rating than 24, but we're using them on printer, so it's 12 to 24. But we filter the power, and I'm sure we have some Big Tree Tech users in here. We'll tell you all about having like dirty, noisy power rails and using a BL Touch. That's something we combat too with the EasyABL. That board has a diode on it and an array of capacitors that filter the power and decouple the power for the sensor from the power supply, so the printer can't drain it. And basically what we want to see, we don't want the voltage going like this, because that can change the detection distance and the operation of the sensor and thus the accuracy. So we have basically a smoothing circuit that makes the power damn near flat. So even as the bed's cycling on and off, and even as the hot end's cycling on and off, our sensor gets consistent, reliable power as it's probing. And then the other thing is, like I said, the isolation. So, you know, we've had people that don't listen and don't read directions, and they'll hook up, or they're just not paying attention. They'll send, instead of hooking up to the 12 or 24 volt on their power supply, they'll hook up the AC power, and it completely fries the sensor, completely fries the kit. But because there's no physical connection between our sensor circuitry and all the other parts on there and your Z end stop, there's no electrical connection. So let's say the sensor completely screws up and hard shorts. It's only going to damage the sensor and its board. It's not going to damage your printer's board. You're not going to get 12 or 24 volts going into your 3.3 volt or 5 volt IO pin because there's no physical connection. We use an opto isolator to handle when the sensor's triggered, so the board knows, but there's no actual connection electrically between the sensor's trigger circuit and power and your Z end stop. The downside is if you don't use good quality opto isolators that are quick to respond, then you can get poor accuracy. But we're using really fast ones from Toshiba that react damn near instantly, and they're consistent too. So that's what that board does. It provides safety, and it provides safe operation and power filtering for the sensor. That's about it. Let's see here. RAM design. I have my machines loaded with bootloaders and the new firmware. They're printing great now. For EasyABL in the new year for my Ender 3 and 5. Any way to do EasyABL on the Anycubic Mega S? I have that printer here. I haven't spent any time with it. It's still in the box. So hopefully that's one we'll be able to get supported, because I also have the i3 Mega, which I am going to be working on as well. So hopefully I can work on those side by side because they're pretty similar. The main thing with the i3 Mega, because I know people asked us, the reason it wasn't ever added to Unified 1 is because we needed Marlin 2 to do the parallel serial communication because of that touchscreen. So our goal was to make a kit that adds on another screen and doesn't replace that touchscreen. So you can retain the basic touchscreen functionalities, but then still have a full-on screen. But we need to have Marlin 2 to be able to facilitate that. Like, we have the designs physically made to put the screens on. I just didn't have the software available yet. But now that we have Unified 2, which is built on Marlin 2, it should be pretty good. Printer Mods UK, just an ANET A upgrade for a customer using the Rat Rig frame kit. My God, never again. What a ball ache. I've never seen another T-Nut I'll never have to see another Tina again in my life. Oh, if I never have to see another Tina again in my life, I'll be one happy man. Yeah. If you do have an ANET A8, the AM8 conversion that's on Thingiverse is really good. I get really good prints. If you guys watched the Sunlu S8 stream last night, I printed that on my AM8 build. All that does is ABS. That's it. Speaking of the Sunlu S8, are you going to stream and finish the S8 today? Yes, 6 p.m. Central. It's already scheduled on the channel here. So I'll be back at 6. We'll be wrapping up this around 3, and then we'll be back at 6, and we'll wrap it up. I'm really excited to see how it came out, because it came together really nice. If you guys saw the stream, the hot end setup that Red Squirrel design guy made, it's really clean. I really like it. Derek, question. Oh, I meant to say hi to you, Derek. Derek, I have your, I won't show your address, but I have your board you sent in for testing, which is my weekend project. I'm going to try not to work tomorrow and Christmas. I'm going to try to actually take a break and spend some time with the family. But he said he's got the Ender 3 Dual Z kit, but no matter what I do, it binds the rods. Do you have any assembly tip that would help? The reason the rods would be binding, first start with the simple stuff. Take your lead screw out, put it on a flat surface, and roll it. If it rolls smoothly and it sounds smooth, then we can assume the rods are flat. If they're not, or straight. If they're not straight, what you'll hear is you roll it, you'll hear like a voop, 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 voop kind of noise instead of just like a uniform sound as it rolls. If your lead screws are bent, that's going to do it. If they're not, what I would recommend doing is go through... on the Edge of Tech, there's the Ender 3X gantry rework video. And make sure your gantry's all aligned. Make sure your eccentrics aren't too tight on either side. And what I'll usually do if I'm having like man, this thing's binding up, I'll go around and just slightly loosen up the bolts that hold the gantry and the wheels and kind of let everything settle and then carefully tighten it all back down. Make sure all the wheels are lined up correctly. Make sure they're all touching the extrusions. Make sure my eccentric nuts are not too tight and not too loose. And then just check all the mechanicals. You might have a bad bearing somewhere. It could be a bad bearing in one of the bearing blocks that holds the rods. It could be a bad bearing on the wheels. And I don't know if you're using like a backlash nut or not on that, but if you're using a backlash nut with the dual Z kit, you only want it on the side with the motor. You don't want it on both sides. And we do have that listed for the dual Z kit, and I believe... it's definitely on the anti-backlash nut that we sell product page, telling you to only use one on the motor side. So this one's going to need a name. Actually, if anybody has any name suggestions, they can be nothing insanely obscene, but PG-13 is okay. But this one's going to need a name when it goes in the print farm. So. But yeah, I would go over, like I said, start with your lead screws. Oh yeah, check your couplers. Make sure your couplers are straight. So just make sure they're not wobbly. Loosen those. I thought I had a coupler here. So like on your couplers, you got like these little grub screws that this is like our style coupler, but the Creality ones have adjustment screws. Make sure it didn't get tightened down slightly. Tilted. It could even be a little bit, but that's all it takes. Like, you have to have everything aligned properly. But check the mechanicals. It's going to be a mechanical thing. I haven't seen you post anything else in here, but let me know. And if for some reason you did get a bent lead screw from us or your stock one's bent, I do believe we still have extra lead screws in the shop. So like, let's say your stock one's bent. I know we have extra lead screws out in the shop, so if you wanted to, like, they're the same ones that come with the kit, but you could use it on either side. So if your one that came with the kit is bad, let us know and we'll replace it. If the one that came with your printer is bad, let us know and just pay shipping and we'll send you out one. Because I somehow ended up with like 50 extras, and I know we've used a few here and there, but I have a ton of them. So I have a ton of lead screws. So if one of yours are bent, let us know. If it's one that we sent you, they're supposed to be checking that stuff. But if it's one we send you, we'll replace it. And if it's a stock one, let us know and just cover shipping, and I'll send you out one. I have so many of them sitting here and they're just collecting dust. So, because like when you install the dual Z kit, you put R screw on the motor side, and then the stock one goes on the side you're adding the bracket on. But you can use the one that comes with the kit on the other side. So the ones I have are a little bit longer than stock, but it'll still work. So I have a ton of them. Just let me know. Let's see here. Let's go back. Man, you guys are chatty. I answered Derek's question, and I'm good. I like chatty. 3 but I can't wait to go to the U.S. so I can buy some stuff. Well, if you come to the U.S., let me know, man. If you're out by Indiana, once all this human malware situation starts calming down, I don't mind having guests occasionally. Brian Spangler is using an Edge router PoE5, Edge switch 150 watt Cloud Key G2 with 5 cameras. I won't be changing my cameras to Unify. I've got a Blue Iris set up with a bunch of random OnVIF ones, but those are all on their separate VLAN and isolated. So he's got 2 UAP AC Pros. I got 2 of those, 2 in the shop. Those are nice. UAP ACM and 3 USW Flex Minis. I started before Unify had much for features. Yeah, they really their original routers were kind of limited. I don't know if you guys noticed, my background was in IT, so I deployed a lot of Unify stuff, and I wasn't a big fan of their new, their original routers that they had. They were kind of limited, but they were priced well, so if you didn't need a ton of features, they were a good bang for the buck. But I've been eyeballing that Dream Machine for a couple months now, and it looks like they worked all the bugs out of it, so I'm like, well, let's just clean house and upgrade the network, because that's the last thing. I just did a new server last year for literally put a whole rack downstairs, and the server runs some of my personal stuff and a lot of the business stuff. My router and my network switches were the last thing that hasn't been recently upgraded, but they're running. I'm just upgrading, and I'll keep the other stuff for backup, so if one of the new ones goes down, I have a backup. But jumping over to the network side of things, one thing I really am looking forward to by going to all the same switches and having them all report back to the Unify controller is VLAN management. Because right now, if I need to add a VLAN, I have to hit every single switch individually and add the VLAN, provision the ports, and all that other stuff. Just the time savings alone when I'm having to do network stuff is going to be worth it. Yeah. So when Dr. Jekyll and Tony are chatting, oop. Redline said, I rewatched the S8 stream you did yesterday. I think the printer looked a lot better with the new shroud and those updates. You think it'll be a decent printer? I do. I really do. I really do. I really do think. We'll find out tonight. We're going to print a Benchy on it. Also, Tiny Machine's already shipped my hot ends that I order. So, thank you, Chris, if you're watching for some reason. I feel like Chris isn't a big YouTube guy, but either way, he got those shipped out. So, I got spare Creality hot ends coming. I can't believe we didn't have any spare Creality hot ends out there. That blew my mind. I was like, how do we not have any? Because we've had Creality machines that we've replaced the hot ends on, and I think I might have been throwing them out because I was like, oh, we're not going to use them. But now we use a lot of the stock Creality hot ends because they're not bad. We put our tough tube in and call it a day for the most part. I have 2 machines in here that are running the stock Creality hot ends. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. C5RC, just got my EasyBoard and EasyABL running on my SVL1. Wow, this thing is awesome now. Thanks for great products. And by the way, did you ever make that Discord for testing new products? I did. It's hidden. I have to add you to a special role so you can see it, because I know you have one of the Easy Plugs. We've been chatting about the Easy Plugs in here, man. Are you in here? If you're in the Discord, that's what we're doing. I was gonna be like, we can email. I was like, you know what? If I'm in people beta test, it's one spot. We're just using Discord. I do like, if you guys want to bug me directly, I hang out in our Discord server a lot. There's a lot of cool people in there. And a lot of times we talk printers. Sometimes we talk other stuff. There's all sorts of different channels. So I'm trying to find you. I don't know if you're C5RC in Discord or not, but post in the live stream channel right meow. Right meow. Oh, I see Justin posting Livestream's channel. When will the EasyBoard Pro be available? We're trying to shoot for end of Q1. And the EasyBoard Pro will be the EasyBoard, but with dual extrusion support. And a few other things. But I don't want to spill the beans because last time we talked about features of new products, Big Tree Tech was like, for me? For me? There we go. I added you, Mr. C5. You should see it under support. It's beta-testing. All right. Mike V. As soon as I finish 28-hour print job, I'm going to set up dual extruder tool-in-one kit bought from TH3D. Read all the stuff. The hardest part about the dual extrusion stuff is not physically installing the parts. It's slicers if you don't use Simplify 3D. One thing, I'm not a fan of Simplify 3D as a company. I like their software. The company, I don't like. Their support is slow, and if you do any digging, you'll see the company is not the greatest. But they do make good software. And one thing they do amazingly is dual extrusion. So you can get it working with Cura and Slick 3R and I believe IdeaMaker. But if you just want a dual extrusion experience on the slicer side that just works, S3D is actually really good. So Tom Taylor says, on my Dual Z, the top plate stuck out 3mm. I had to print a shim and add washers to the carriages. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but if that's like our kit, send us pictures. Send us a support ticket in, put to assign to me, and I'll take a look at it because I want to see if it's something that was, you know, like you didn't get set the right parts, or maybe your printer has a slightly different revision, or maybe a defect that isn't going to allow it to be installed correctly. But let me know what you had to do. Send in pictures to our support and put a sign to Tim. Just put like talk to Tim on stream or something. And I'll see what's going on, because if there's like some weird revision of the Ender 3 or V2 or whatever, or Creality's changing stuff because they've done that on us, then I want to make sure we have it documented at the very least. Wait, same name, C5RC. Wait, you posted in here, there's a PC freak person. I'm going to remove that. Oh, it's the wrong person. That's Killswitch. Hang on. I don't think I sent anything to Killswitch. I don't see a C5RC in here. Wait, did I send you one, Killswitch? Well, his username is Killswitch, but now he's PC Freak. He changed his nickname. They're talking about Discord. Okay, I can't remember. I know I sent him to a couple people. I'm trusting you, man. I'm assuming you're watching. Don't betray my trust. Don't give me any more reason to be skeptical about people. Lucky 110. Hey, Tim, just want to say thank you to your team for going above and beyond, giving me a specific part that is not normally sold separately. I'm assuming you're the motor guy. Not a problem, man. We always have random stuff. It doesn't hurt to ask if, you know, in general, if you guys are looking for some random thing, you know, like random weird parts, let us know. You can email streams@th3dstudio.com or just contact us. It might take us, like, those tickets get lower priority or emails. But if we have something, we'll usually get back to you. Let me see here. Man, it's almost been an hour already. Holy crap. 49 minutes. Say 3 o'clock. We're wrapping up right around 3. Because I actually have to run to the grocery store and pick up some stuff before the holiday. Just so everybody knows, we're closed tomorrow. We gave everybody Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off. So tomorrow, the 24th, and Friday, the 25th, which is Christmas, we're closed. And we'll also be closed on the 31st and the 1st. The 31st is also Samantha's birthday. And obviously the New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So, Do. Oh, Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor has a AliExpress dual Z kit. Well, I can't help you there. I can tell you though that like ours, like they're pretty solid. I have them on a few. I have them on a few printers here, including my personal one. My personal one, I went and grabbed like all of our upgrades and was like, we're kitting this sucker out. But you know what? It's one of my most reliable machines. I can just send a job to it. It just goes. Artifact 3D, do you have unified firmware for the CR10 for the 427 board? No, we do not, and we're not going to add support for that because Creality has not advertised that board as a 12-volt compatible one. I believe it will work, but my worry would be the current going through the MOSFETs for the bed, especially on a CR10. If you do want a 32-bit board that's a drop-in for a CR10, our Easy board works on 12 and 24 volts and handles the amperage of the CR10 no problem. So, but we're not, you can make your own firmware for the CR10 for that board. It is possible to make it work, but we're not going to release it because I don't want to be dealing with warranty claims because that board wasn't designed to handle the current on a 12-volt printer. They do seem to handle fine on the Ender 3 and the Ender 5s, but you got to remember you're dealing with a significantly less amount of current on a 24-volt bed. Same wattage, essentially, but the current's a lot lower, and that's where you start straining the parts, like the MOSFETs, the traces, the screw terminals. So, I have not tested that board in a CR10, and I don't have plans to test it on there. So, but like I said, if you're looking for a drop-in replacement board for 32-bit for the CR10, the Easy board works great. And I can guarantee you that it'll work correctly on there and handle the bed and all the other stuff with no issues. So a lot of people don't realize when you go from 12 volt to 24 volt, you're not exactly, don't take this exact, but you're roughly cutting the amperage. If everything's the same wattage, the heaters, the beds, everything, you're roughly cutting the amperage in half going to 24 volts. So you can get away with thinner power traces. You can get away with MOSFETs that aren't rated as high. You can get away with cheaper screw terminals. So it's not necessarily the volts that strain the boards, it's the amps, and 12 volt printers have a lot more load in terms of amps. So, you know, I feel like every stream, I don't know if you guys are just messing with me, but every stream, if someone asks about the Ender 6, and my will reply with the same thing, is that I don't have one, so I can't comment on it. And before someone asks about the Ender 3 Max, Creality finally shipped it, and it looks like we will have that the first week of January. So, I'm also gonna be doing some more live streams because I gotta get through. I don't know if you guys see all these boxes back here, but I have a ton of printers that need to get gone through. So, Jay Santiago, Tim, I've got an Easy ABL sub bed mounts flex coming tomorrow. Been holding onto micro Swiss hot end direct kit. Definitely still on the hot end, but on the fence about the direct drive. Your thoughts? I know I don't have them, but I know a lot of people that really like them. So, I mean, if you're doing upgrades and you can handle doing multiple things at once, I don't know your skill level. If you're a more advanced user and you've been around the block a few times when it comes to modifications, then go ahead and just do it all at once. But if you're relatively new, do one thing at a time. Get one thing working, and then break it again by doing another upgrade. I need to check. Someone mentioned the tarantula. I know you're trolling, Derek, but I need to follow up with them because I talked to them on December 9th. Oh, look at that. Today is exactly 2 weeks, which according to our own review policy, that's the 2 weeks of time that a company has time to resolve an issue. So I'm going to give him some time. If he doesn't give me a tracking number soon, then I'm probably just going to junk that printer, to be completely honest. And if that's the case, I think what I'll do is, if he's not going to send me parts, I don't need that machine. I don't need it. I don't need that printer. I don't need to support it with our firmware. I'll probably just give it away. You know, I don't need the parts. We have so many parts here. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So, someone says check live streams on Discord. Oh, Tony's got snow. It's cold, bud. There we go. I got you, C5RC. There we go. Yeah, it's a little bit of snow. All right, next one is QDig. What's the function difference between the two Raspberry Pi options in your store, the 2 gig of RAM versus the 4 gig of RAM? The 2 gig is perfectly fine. We added the 4 gig on because some people were asking for it, and it allows us to be more flexible with the product going out of stock because sometimes a 2 gig I can't get, but I can get the 4 gig boards. Sometimes I can get the 4 gigs, but I can't, or sometimes I can get the 2s, but I can't get the 4s. Sometimes I get the 4s, but I can't get the 2s. So not only does it allow us to keep it in stock, but if you're running a ton of plugins, it does help to have the extra RAM. But from what I've seen, even with the plugins we ship it with, we're not really even coming close to the 2 gig limit. So it's more of a future-proofing thing. I think it's like a $8 or $9, maybe $10 difference between the two. So it more comes down to like part availability. So in terms of performance, they run the same. That's not to say that maybe Octoprint does some new stuff in the future and they'll leverage the bigger memory, but as of right now, they're not leveraging the larger memory at this current point in time. But there could also be plugins too that I'm not privy to or that I don't use that would benefit from the higher RAM. So I'm still using some 3B and 3B plus boards here that have like a gig of RAM in our print farm. They still run great. Crazy Box, any info on the Easy Plug? So the guys, which a few of them are in here, currently watching, have been testing the plugs and messing with stuff. I do not have a user manual yet, but that will be worked on next week. So I have to take a bunch of screenshots, and I don't know if I'm going to do a video. I think that's more of a thing where I'm just going to have a guide like plug it in, connect to the AP, go to this IP address, enter in your access point info, and then, the plugin setup, that kind of stuff. So if any beta testers are watching and want to start, getting screenshots together, that would help out a lot. Otherwise, I'm going to just do it myself, and that'll be next week. But in terms of the production, I believe that they're still moving along. I'm checking right here. I can actually show you really quick. Let me download that little video clip. So they actually sent me a render of the box, and I can show it to you. We're all fancy here. And here it is. So here's the box for it. Look at that. You like that? Oh, so fancy. So fancy. So, but hopefully we'll have them the first, second week of January. The full retail ones with the boxes and everything. And we're only doing US plugs for right now. So, Nadav said he did. Awesome. Okay. And I did update the documentation on the GitHub for the new Tasmota templates and the old ones. So 9.0 and older and 9.1 and later. Those are on there, and those have been tested. I think they're shipping with, 8.5 was the release, but you can update it over Wi-Fi. So I'm not super concerned about the version, but that's the version I tested with. I'm going to test with 9.2. I think Tasmota 9.2 is out now, is the latest one, unless they release something like in the last couple of days. But I updated actually all my Tasmota devices to 9.1 and then a couple to 9.2. So, but I mean, it's a local controlled device, and it has to turn on and off and talk to MQTT and whatnot. There's really not much to improve. Like, we're not adding sensors and stuff onto it. So, but we are at 3 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and put the little line in here. And that line notes that anything after that will not get an answer. Except RAM, I'll answer your stuff real quick. Is it possible to put a starter package with easy plugs for people who want to get into it? I'm thinking about doing stuff with Home Assistant. I just got to figure out what I want to do. I have Home Assistant running on a NUC, and it's very fast. But that's a whole computer, and I don't want to get into the business of selling computers. Maybe we'll sell pre-flashed NVMe drives or something, and people can source the NUC themselves. But let's see here. Is it possible to add, or what I am missing, or am I missing in the TH3 firmware to label what file is being printed while the printer is printing? What are you printing from? Because if it's, well, here's the thing. If it's SD, well, Octoprint's not going to, unless you have a plugin that does it, it's not going to tell you what it printed. But the problem is, even if the firmware, like, initially displayed the file name you're printing, the problem is that once you have an M117 command, which is the message display, it's going to wipe it out. I believe I recall seeing something in Marlin about like a status line where it'll write to that message section on the LCD what it's printing, but I can't remember what it's called. I'd have to look at it. That never really occurred to me because I always hit print and then I remember what I'm printing. David FL's got a lot of stuff. I want to do all at one time order recommendation. So he's got Easy Board, Dual Z, All Metal Hot End MOSFET. Okay, that's not too complicated. I would do Dual Z and then the hot end. Make sure the Z is moving correct. Make sure your hot end's going. And then swap the board and do the MOSFET at the same time. That's what I would do. Do the physical mechanical stuff first, so the hot end and the Dual Z. Make sure that's all good. And then switch out the board and add the MOSFET. That's what I would get. Hey, look at Scott's in here. Just said M117, they have the printer display its automatic status line. Oh, I did not know that. So if you send a blank M117. Interesting. Interesting. Today I learned something. Thank you, Scott. Now I kind of want to try it. I'll have to play with that. So if you're using like a Pi with Octoprint, you could have it. I think you could have it periodically send to M117 then. But yeah. If anybody has any ideas for like kind of home automation starter kits, I've been toying with the idea of that with Home Assistant because I really like Home Assistant. My whole thing is that while you can run Home Assistant on a Pi, and I could definitely make pre-built ones. I find that you quickly outgrow the Pi horsepower fairly quickly. Even if you went like with like a Pi 4 with 8 gigs of RAM. And the failure point with those is that micro SD cards are not meant for tons and tons of reads and writes. The high endurance ones are better, but yeah. Ideally, if I didn't want to deal with selling literally a computer, I think the Intel NUC is a solid way to go for hosting Home Assistant while still having a ton of headroom for speed and space. So, but I do have the ability to pre-flash like SSDs for NUCs. So, Jessica Ryan. Oh yeah, because you had it. I haven't messed with the BTT00. What is that? BTT002 board? What is that? I'm gonna Google that. BTT002. What is this? That's new to me. Oh, it's that Prusa drop-in replacement. I can't say I can help you there because I haven't messed with that board. That's one hell of a downgrade though, because the Prusa come with the, I think it's the INSI Rambo, which is way better built than anything Big Tree Tech puts out. And you know what, Prusa, I'll give Prusa this. Their firmware is very well optimized for their board and their printer. I would just stick with the stock board on that. I feel like even while technically this BTT002 is an upgrade because it's a 32-bit, I'm willing to bet it's not going to be as reliable as the stock board. Because like I said, I mean, the stock board's 8-bit, but they're damn reliable. They're high quality boards. So, yeah, I believe so our pies that are shipping are Easy Pie kits for the Octoprint kits. Those have those we're shipping with a 64-bit OS. So, but I believe the Home Assistant image is 64-bit compatible, if I'm correct. Someone mentioned Odoo x86 Combat or x86 Advanced come with a built-in Arduino. Interesting. Yeah, if you guys don't have any like single board, like I'd prefer some sort of single board computer that we could run a managed install of Home Assistant on. That would be ideal. I just googled this Odoo x86 Advanced. It's actually a neat little thing. I'll have to check that out. But anyways, we are coming up on 3 o'clock because I got to get going right around 3:30. So, but yeah. Anyways, that's about it. Sorry, I was like looking at this Odoo. Okay, back on focus here, so I wrap this up. Yeah, so those of you guys that are this your first time coming here, we do these every week on Mondays and Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Central Time. I keep them right around an hour, so they're easy to watch, and nothing that takes up too much of the time here because I do have a lot of stuff to do. Hope you guys like. I think the format will be we'll open with a little project, whatever I was working on, if I have something, and then let people put the questions in and keep going. So, anyways, I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas because that's in 2 days. This year went by quick. I hope next year is a lot better than this year was. So, anyways, hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. I hope you guys learned something. And I'll see you guys on the next stream. And I'll see you again at 6 p.m. Central Time because we're going to be wrapping up the Sunlu S8. So, take it easy, everybody. And as always, happy printing.